And welcome back to another episode of the Bleed Lows podcast, the live pregame edition of the show today as we get you ready for game 3, the series finale against the Colorado Rockies as Bobby Miller makes his 2025 season debut. And we're definitely going to dive into that a little bit later. But before that, as always, I'm here with my co-host, Jacob Brownson, and he had a busy day today. We're going to get over the Kershaw Rehab and the questions he asked there as well. But if you guys aren't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. We are very, very close to hitting our goal, our milestone of 15,000 subscribers. And our own Doomsound Mike Salas does have a jersey giveaway for when we hit that milestone. So be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media. That way, when we do hit that milestone, we'll have a way to give away that jersey to our fans that have been with us for the entire ride. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the website, DodgersBeat.com. That's where we have all of our editorials, opinion pieces, interviews. We're going over everything. Dodgers season is in full swing. But, Jacob, I know you had a busy day. How was it, firstly, to be watching minor league baseball? There was a couple, you had Hae-Sung Kim there. You had Clayton Kershaw there. I think the OKC ballpark is very nice, and I kind of got some in-depth look thanks to you. But just how was it today for you?
Man, it was awesome. It was eventful. You had Kershaw pitched, and then Phillips closed the game out. Justin Jarvis also went 5 innings, which was pretty crazy. And then, seeing some of those guys like Freeland, Kim. Rushing didn't play today, but got a little nod from him, if that's anything. And then Fiducia was out there. So lots of guys that are going to be contributors or have been contributors. But obviously the headline was Clayton Kershaw today.
Yeah, and we could just get right into it. Obviously, the headline was Clayton Kershaw, and it was kind of a bit unexpected when I was with the team in DC and Philadelphia, kind of going over next steps for Kershaw. Obviously, they go and visit the White House, and Kershaw was in attendance for that because he was the one giving the speech, speaking on behalf of the Dodgers, just as he did in 2021. And basically, we saw him throw a bullpen out there in DC. We spoke to him, once he was getting changed and all that stuff, and getting ready to head back to either Arizona or Texas. But he kind of said, maybe the next step is to continue facing live hitters. And then a couple days later, Dave Roberts, hits us back saying, he's actually going to start his minor league rehab assignment. So clearly everything must be progressing well to get to this point. I know he was transferred to the 60-day IL, and he isn't eligible to return until around mid-May. May 17th, I believe, is the official date. And it seems like Kershaw's very much on track. That's around 5.5 weeks away from today. So say he gets a couple more rehab starts in and he's builds up, and he could realistically join this rotation either late May or early June. But what did you see from Kershaw today? Because he was, by all accounts, very efficient. I was very surprised to see him get into the third inning, but what was just the vibe there with Kershaw, the fans, and what you saw in particular from what he pitched today?
Yeah, man. First of all, the atmosphere was insane. It was a field trip day out there in Oklahoma City. So I got asked for like 15 balls from different like 6-year-olds. It was an interesting experience, but Kershaw was really good, extremely efficient. He went 3 innings, gave up 2 hits, didn't walk anyone, no runs with 2 strikeouts, 30 pitches, 22 strikes. So pretty much kind of what you want to see from him. It was a 5-pitch first, a 10-pitch second, and a 15-pitch third. But he looked really good. The velocity wasn't exactly where you might want it to be, but that is expected this early in the process. He in the first inning, I think it was like 86.8 and 87.4, but it did get up towards the high 88 point somethings. He flashed the curve a couple times around 70, and then the slider was anywhere from like 82 to 86. I think it kind of varied. So he looked really good. He threw 5 different pitches because he also did throw a sinker, which he doesn't want to be a sinker, I found out after the game, and a changeup that's technically classified as a splitter, but he calls it a changeup.
Yeah, that was something that I was curious about because while you were covering the game, I was watching on the MLB or the minor league at bat, and I saw it registering as splitters, sinkers. And I was like, all right, is Kershaw like toying with the new arsenal, obviously with the diminished velocity? But we'll lead off with that. I feel like that was the biggest thing, especially that caught my eye and a lot of other, fans on social media as well. I'm not too concerned about it because you realistically have to think about where Kershaw is coming from. He had off-season surgery. He didn't throw off a mound until the first week of spring training, and then he's kind of been progressively continuing to rehab his knee, continuing to rehab his toe. And from what I understand from when we were in DC and we talked to him, it seems like the toe's still in its final steps of being fully healed and recovered from that surgery. 87.5 miles per hour was the average velo on that fastball today. But I think Kershaw's kind of, obviously, he's 37 years old. He's in the twilight of his career, but he's changing the way he pitches, despite him only, averaging around, maxing out at 89 miles per hour with that fastball. He only threw it like, I think, 12 of his 30 pitches on the day. We saw the slider work. We saw the curveball. We saw, his version of a changeup, and we saw what he was using it with. And he's just a pitcher's pitcher now. He can still get strikeouts. He can still get weak contact. There really wasn't a hard hit ball on him all day. And those minor league hitters, they were eagerly aggressive against Kershaw, and he worked with it. He ended up getting 3 innings. I thought it was only going to be like a 1 inning thing, maybe 2 innings, but to see him go, up and down 3 times, I think that speaks to where he is health wise.
Yeah. I think he looked really good. He threw 9 4-seams and then 1 2-seamer / sinker. Again, velocity is not exactly where you want it to be, but it did trend upwards as the game went on. And I think that's important to look at. But yeah, he's going to be a different pitcher, I think. Not entirely, but he's not probably going to get by with 3 pitches anymore, as he dominated with the majority of his career. And that's why I asked him about him. You saw the changeup, you saw the sinker. And as soon as I saw those, I knew they were intentional, because those are things he's flashed in the past, mainly when he was pitching injured in 2023, I think, is when he really started throwing that changeup a little more. That's when it first became prominent, I think. But when I asked him about it, he said it's a pitch he would like to throw. It feels good right now, but he doesn't know how it's going to continue to feel. And I thought that was really interesting. He likes where it's at right now, but if it doesn't feel like this in a month, he might not be throwing it in big league action.
Yeah, I know the changeup is, from my history with it and from people I've talked to that have played the sport, the changeup's just one of the hardest pitches to throw, because if you're not throwing it correctly, it's kind of just a slower version of your fastball. And if it's not dipping or doing whatever the action it's supposed to be, it's basically a bullpen or a BP, batting practice fastball that you would hit. But Kershaw looked sharp. I mean, my overall expectations weren't extremely high, because I was curious to say, all right, well, he hasn't pitched since August. He has the 2 surgeries. He's 37 years old. What version of Clayton Kershaw are we going to get? Because even before that, wash away last season, 2023, he battled that shoulder injury, but he was still arguably the Dodgers' best starter that year. Had an ERA under 3, pitched over 100 innings, was a workhorse, ended up starting the game 1 of the NLDS, and obviously we know how that all unfolded. But when he's healthy, even with diminished stuff, he is still one of the best pitchers in baseball. And he's certainly, I don't know what fans are expecting, because obviously if you look at the rotation, once guys come back like Tony Gonsolin, like Blake Snell, what if Bobby Miller lights a fire today and puts his hat in the ring for consideration to stay up in the major league level? Kershaw's going to get he's going to slot into the rotation. He's earned that. They're going to give him the opportunity to start. And I feel like some fans may not like that, especially after, some of the advanced metrics of his pitches today. But I just feel like that's where we're at with Kershaw. When he's ready, he will be there every 5th or 6th day.
Yeah, if he's active on the roster, he's going to be a staple of the rotation until he decides to retire. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. And honestly, I think that's how it should be after everything he's given to the organization his entire career. I think that's perfectly justified. And I do think he can be a very good major league pitcher. Again, the stuff was a little down today. You would expect that to rise with more outings and more intensity too. I'm not reading too much into the stuff, but nothing on there really looks that bad. Like if he's throwing 5 average pitches with his command, the Dodgers will take that any day of the week. So yeah, he's going to be around until he decides to retire.
Yeah, and then just a quick recap for anyone that's joining us or didn't get a chance to check out Clayton Kershaw's start today. 3 innings, 30 pitches, 2 strikeouts, scoreless, had a double play in that first inning, weak contact all around. A good first step for Clayton Kershaw. And I think what another thing people need to understand, Jacob, is this isn't going to be a quick rehab. This is going to be a lengthy thing. It's kind of like spring training for him in the minors. It's probably going to be around 4 to 5 starts, I would say, at minimum for him to get built up. I think the reason he got to 3 innings today was just because he was so efficient in the zone, and those, hitters were swinging early in the counts, making weak contact ground balls, little flyouts. He was able to take it to the third, but there's going to be starts along the line where he's going to have to work. We saw Tony Gonsolin, work around traffic and all that, and he's going to incorporate other pitches. So May 17th is the day where he can officially come back, but kind of looking on the outlook here, when do you anticipate Kershaw returning? Do you think it's going to be that mid-May, late May, or do you think the Dodgers try to push it until June?
I think it really depends on how he progresses down in AAA. But at the same time, they're not going to keep Clayton Kershaw in Oklahoma City or Rancho or Tulsa for that long if they don't have to, in my opinion. Again, I think he's going to get that sort of treatment where if he's ready on May 17th, he's going to be pitching for the Dodgers on May 17th.
Yeah, so time will tell. I assume Kershaw's probably going to be back at it in the next probably 6 days, next week sometime around. I would imagine probably 3 innings is the goal again, unless he gets into trouble, and then you kind of go off of how he's feeling for the rest of that start. But be sure to subscribe, follow us all over social media. We'll have you up to date with hopeful coverage of his next outing. But let's get to today's game. And I feel like it's a big day for us. We haven't gone live together in over 12 days now. And it's Miller Bump Day. It's Miller Day. It's a guy that me and you have been very high on. We've looked into the advanced metrics. We tried to, solve the question, what went wrong with Bobby Miller? It was a guy that I was extremely high on and looking forward to take another massive step last year. But kind of a dud. He was statistically the worst starting pitcher in Major League Baseball last year. 2-4 record in 13 starts, an ERA well over 8.5. An ERA plus or a WHIP at 1.77, 6.97 FIP. 20% K percentage, not looking good there. An even alarming 11.6 walk percentage. And after that first start of the year against the St. Louis Cardinals, where he looked like a Cy Young contender, he went 1-4 with a 9.54 ERA the rest of the way. So Bobby Miller, before we get into, what we expect tonight and what we're thinking is going to happen, what went wrong? I know you've done a couple of deep dives, but what's like 1 or 2 things that went wrong with Bobby Miller, even including the injuries that we know he went through last year?
Yeah, so the first thing, since you mentioned injuries, was that knee injury. It caused him, CJ Garcia and I looked into this a lot. It caused him to kind of fall off towards first base, which messed with his command. It messed with the movements on some of his pitches. That's why his changeup looked the best it ever looked. Ironically, is because he was falling off. It actually made the changeup better, but it made the command of it worse, and it made everything else worse. And that really transitions into my next point, is that he just couldn't throw strikes efficiently. And when he did throw strikes, it was not where you want your strikes to be. His behind percentage was up on every pitch except one, which all behind percentages is the amount of those pitches that are thrown while behind in the count. Obviously, if your behind percentages are up, you're throwing more balls and you're getting hitters into hitter-friendly counts that you want to avoid. The big thing I noticed that really showed the difference when he can get ahead is his xFIP through significant counts. Last year, when he started at a 1-0 count, the xFIP was 6.73. At 0-1, it was a 2.78. So that first pitch just really kind of set the tone for him in at bats. And yeah, it really came down to command. The slider, I think, is going to be a big pitch for him. It's one he liked in 2023 and one he couldn't really throw in 2024 at all. And that's an important pitch for him because it plays off his fastball, plays off his curveball. And when he's on, he's making that slider a competitive pitch, but it just wasn't ever competitive last year.
Yeah, and you mentioned injuries. The knee thing was something that bothered him all in the second half of last season, and he mentioned it. He didn't want to put blame on it, but in August, after a start against the Orioles, he mentioned, I'm dealing with some knee issues, and then we started kind of connecting the dots. I know you and CJ were, did a really good job in terms of showing video of, pre-injury and then after injury, and you can clearly see that his mechanics are kind of all over the place. Honestly, he's like the pitching version of Cody Bellinger when Bellinger was kind of all in a funk when he was dealing with his injuries. The biggest thing with, Miller, though, was just the command, like you said. Anybody that watches baseball can tell you that if you get ahead in the count, you're definitely on a track to be a lot better or have a lot more success. And Miller just couldn't do that. And his pitches were just flat. His fastball was easily hit. The changeup, like you said, unironically, was his best pitch last year due to his knee injury. But everything else across the board, besides, his velocity and extension, that was A-okay. Baseball savants still like that. But everything across the board just took a dip. And you could even see it with the walk rate. Last year, in 2023, his rookie season, 6.3 walk percentage. That almost doubled last year, and it clearly bit him in the ass more times than not, because not only was he walking guys, once he had to, had the pressure to throw strikes, he was just throwing them, like you said, where you don't want to throw strikes, and he was getting eaten alive, giving up home runs left and right, multi-homers. Luckily for him, even in those 13 starts, the Dodgers offense was one of the, top 3 offenses in the game last year. So his record didn't really reflect as poorly as his pitching was. 2-4, you would think it would be a lot worse on any other team. But I'm hoping anything that he did during the offseason pays off. But we even saw, I kind of thought he was cursed, because the first game he appears in spring training this year, comeback line drive in the head, gets placed in concussion protocol. I mean, what the hell? Like, this guy has to have the worst luck imaginable.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate to see. And like you mentioned, his stuff was down last year in that spring training start. Now, it was a smaller sample. It looked a lot better than it did the previous year. But yeah, that really sucked, seeing that. And then like Doom Sal said in the chat, in his AAA outing since, he's been walking some guys. So I really don't know what to expect from him today. I think it really does just all come down to command with him. If he can throw competitive pitches, he's going to be okay. He's got the stuff to be really good if he can just avoid the middle of the plate and avoid the opposite batter's box too.
Yeah, so you look at his start today. He's starting against the Colorado Rockies team that only has 3 wins. The Dodgers are looking not only to complete the sweep tonight, but they're looking for Miller to make a statement, because Dave Roberts, was very candid about, what Miller's role is, and he couldn't confirm, guarantee him a spot moving forward. Landon Knack, when he got recalled last week, Roberts was like, he's going to get another turn through the rotation. Robleski, maybe he's going to get another turn in the rotation. But for Bobby Miller, it seems like the team is very uncertain about his future. And I think this start, I know we're so big on Bobby Miller, but I really think this start is critical into what his role with the team is going to be this year, because we've already seen it. Blake Snell's been on the IL, Kershaw, Gonsolin, they may be coming back, but Tyler Glass now has had his injury history. Dustin May's had his injury history. Yamamoto last year, first year in the Major League Baseball, barely got over, I don't even think he got over 100 innings last year. They're going to have to look at that. They want these guys to be fresh and ready for October. So there's going to be guys from the minor leagues that come up, and it seems like Miller wasn't even the first thought of who they wanted to come up. Knack got the shot, and then Robleski got the shot. If Miller crashes and burns tonight, it's really going to change the way the Dodgers, I think, view him. Even as much talent and raw power with the velocity and the pitch mix and all the nasty stuff that we saw in 2023. If that guy's not on the mound or a somewhat on the mound tonight, I just don't know where the Dodgers go moving forward here. But what are you expecting overall for Miller tonight against this struggling Rockies team?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It is a huge start for him. It it would be hard for him to have a bad start with the Rockies lineup he's facing tonight. Um, but I expect good things, I guess. Like, I really don't know because it does come down to if he can throw strikes. But actually, I do expect a good start because the Rockies swing at everything. So they're a very aggressive team. I think that plays to his advantage with the stuff he has. I think he makes it at least 5. I'll say that. Throw a couple strikeouts in there. He probably gives up two walks, 4 hits, and wherever the earned runs lie, they lie. But I think it'll be a very serviceable start for him.
And Crash in the chat puts up a great question, which kind of is starting to be alluded to by the team now, and that is with the plethora of pitching that the Dodgers have. Say Miller does put on a decent start, and they still don't view a spot for him on the roster. Is he being auditioned? Like, is he being put on the forefront to say, hey, look, he's made the adjustment. He's healthy. He may have got hit on the noggin, but he didn't get a concussion. He's got the stuff. We just don't got a spot for him. Obviously, we've seen a couple of trade rumors already pop up, from Bob Nightingale last week, where Luis Robert is kind of out there and the Dodgers are interested in that route. Are the Dodgers just trying to say, if he's available, this is what he's got. This is what he did against the Colorado Rockies. Do you think the Dodgers are doing somewhat of that game?
I don't know, man. I mean, he's a young, controllable arm, and out of all those pitchers we've seen come up and make some starts, he has the highest ceiling by far. And I don't think another team is going to read too much into a start against the Rockies. I really think it is just it kind of lines up. They can't bring Robleski back up, right? Because of Washington and being sent down. And obviously Nat can't pitch today. So I think Miller just kind of made sense in that aspect and give him a shot, see what he's got. You let him build up a little bit after the hit in the head incident. And I think that's part of why he was in AAA and wasn't making that start against Washington that Robleski might have made. I did want to say, I think Dave Roberts' comments might have been more influenced by the fact that they have 2 days off next week, so they just won't need him. But it is very true that he needs to perform today. If they're gonna trade a young, controllable arm, I have a hard time imagining it's Bobby Miller.
Yeah, it really depends on what they're getting. Are they getting, if it's someone like Luis Robert, no, unless he ends up going back to his 900 OPS 2021 form or somewhere around that caliber, because you bring a player like him to play at that level with the contract that he has with those club options that are very cheap for a player of his caliber or his potential, then I could see it. But I just don't see the Dodgers trading a guy with so much control left, especially when, Dustin May's a free agent after this year. Tony Gonsolin's a free agent after the year after that. Clayton Kershaw's 37. How much longer is he planning on playing? You got Tyler Glass now, but he's had the injury history. Ohtani, he hasn't even stepped on, a major league mound in 18 months now and counting. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon, probably post All-Star break. So I said the same thing last year where I was like, oh, well, the Dodgers have so much, they have so much pitching. They should just trade away some of these guys. And yeah, they kind of did. They got rid of James Paxton, shipped him off to Boston for, some cash. But I saw what they went into October with last year, and they said, well, we had pitching and now we don't. We only have 2.5 starters. Let's roll. And I know the Dodgers won the World Series with that, method last year, but they know, the organization knows, we know that's not going to happen again. And they want to head into October with a 5-man rotation. They want to have those arms available. So Miller's going to be integral. He's going to get more opportunities, but it's just this start today, I want to see something. I want to see either his confidence back a little bit. Doesn't have to strike out everybody. Doesn't have to throw a shutout. I would even take like a four inning, 2-run, 3-run performance. As long as he's not looking all over the place, giving up home runs, walking everybody, I'll be solid on that. But I will say the last two AAA starters have not been up to par. I don't know what's happened. They had really good springs in Robleski and Knack. Just look like a completely different pitcher in their major league turns in the rotation. But I will say the reason why the Dodgers aren't for certain about what Miller's going to be doing is what you said. They have 2 off days next week. I believe they have off Monday and then they have off Thursday or Friday. So you only need to skip nobody. Like you only need one guy up. Say they keep Landon Knack in the rotation or they call him back up. Well, they can't call him back up. Say they bring up Robleski. Well, then there you go. He's eligible to return on the 24th. But the Dodgers are fine pitching wise. And that's why they haven't gone full board with the 6-man rotation yet, because they've seen the amount of off days they have in April. So they're taking advantage of that right now. So maybe in June and July, when there's less off days, more starting pitchers are starting to maybe feel a little bit cramps in their arm, their elbow. Maybe they want to put them on an IL stint. But Miller today, it's his time to shine. I'm interested to see what he does with the opportunity.
Yeah, and one more thing regarding trading him. I know we love how the Dodgers spend money, but they can't give out a 6+ year contract to a starting pitcher every offseason. At the end of the day, they're going to need a homegrown starter. And I just think if anyone's going to be that, it's going to be him. I like this little segue here from Cactus Traveler asking if there are any contact hitters in AA or AAA who can hit 7 through 9, because I believe we're about to talk about the 7 through 9 in the Dodgers order. Boy, do I have a guy for you. Hyesung Kim, that is your guy. Great contact hitter, speed, great defender, pretty much what you would want from a 7 through 9 hitter. The only question is where he is at in his swing change right now, and when he's going to be ready to consistently face major league hitting, because the Dodgers don't want to rush him. That's why he's still down there. It's tough to go through a swing change and then start facing the best of the best immediately. And they want him to be good in the long run, which is why they're taking their time with him, I think.
Yeah, Hyesung Kim is the clear answer there, and he will get his due. I don't know when it's going to be. I imagine this is what it's probably going to come down to. Dave Roberts was asked, I believe, a couple days ago, what's the benchmark for like Andy Pages, like when you would make a move or a roster, spot switch. And his benchmark was kind of similar to what it was with, other players in years past, around 125, 150 at bats. And then that's where you have a large enough sample size to say, hey, this guy needs to work on something. This guy can't take it to this level, or this guy, hey, this guy's the real deal. Maybe we should start switching the lineup and putting him up a little bit higher. That would probably track until maybe sometime mid-May, late May, early June, somewhere along those lines,
50
considering
games in-ish, yeah.
Yeah, since Pages is technically a platoon player where the Dodgers wanted him to start primarily against left-handed pitchers, that really hasn't happened because of his reverse splits this season. But that's when Kim will get his opportunity, unless it's injury related, which does suck to say, but I'm just trying to be a realist here. The Dodgers wanting to have Kim get the most at bats possible. He has a very team friendly contract. He had the minor league options for a reason, because the Dodgers still saw, they saw a lot of potential. They also saw a guy that just clearly wasn't ready for Major League Baseball. And we've even seen him, Kim had a really nice stretch of like 2 weeks, and we've seen a couple back-to-back hitless performance or one-hit performances with the OKC Comets, and now his batting average and his OPS came down a little bit to earth. It's around 268 batting average. OPS went under 900 now. Again, it's around the low 800s, which still very good, but you want to see a little bit of a larger sample size. But, those 7, 8, and 9 hitters, and this is a great way to segue into this conversation, have to play better. And they have to play better for a number of reasons. The biggest one is you look at Shohei Ohtani's stat line, out of his 5 or 6 RBIs that he has on the year, only one of them was another person. A lot of his home runs have been solo shots. Nobody's been on base for him. And that kind of did prompt some media to say, well, have you considered changing the lineup, moving him down to give him better opportunities with men on base? And Dave Roberts said no, because that's their leadoff hitter now. He's such a dynamic guy there in that one hole where he can lead off a game with a bang. He's got speed. He's got the power, contact. He's just a pure overall hitter. But the 7, 8, and 9 hitters do have to step up. And there's a couple guys that we'll get into here, but statistically all together between those spots in the Dodgers order, they're bottom third in the league in terms of production. Slash line 156, 250 on base, 267 slug with a 517 OPS. That's just not going to get it done, especially that one in the middle, the on base percentage. They're only getting on base a quarter of the time. They have to get on base, whether it's a walk, putting the ball in play, getting on base through an error, wild throw, whatever. They got to get on base to set up the big dogs at the top of the lineup for Ohtani, for Betts, for Freeman. If they're not getting on base, it provides less opportunities for these guys to get driven in and to score, and the Dodgers to win a lot of games, which is why even after they start out 8-0, the offense, just besides last night, they had kind of been very zigzaggy, no passing the baton. Last night was the first time they kind of did that all season, so credit to them. But yeah, I think the 7, 8, and 9 hitter criticism is valid. I think if you're someone on social media preaching about it, I think you are being heard, because those players do have to step up.
Yeah, I will say at this point in the season, the way I look at it is it's absolutely valid to criticize it, saying that they all suck and it's time for them to be sent down or released. There just hasn't been a large enough sample for that, but criticism is absolutely warranted. They have not been up to the standard of the Athletics 7 through 9, let alone the Dodgers 7 through 9. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. I think the last couple of days, some of those guys that we're going to get into in a second, I've seen some progress from them. Hasn't necessarily been results, but I'll mention Andy Paz. I felt a lot better about his at-bats the last couple of days. I think Dave also said something about him taking better at-bats. Again, there haven't been results, but that's just kind of how baseball is sometimes. I'm not saying the results are necessarily going to come and that I endorse him fully, but I have really thought he was putting together some better at-bats, and I mean, it can't get any worse, right?
And it's kind of funny because of, I was listening to Dodger Talk, a couple other Dodger podcasts. Where we're at now is a lot of people on social media saying, you know what, maybe Chris Taylor deserves more plate appearances. Like give him some at bats, put him in center field. We saw him there yesterday. His outs were productive. He got on base. He did his thing at the bottom of the Dodgers order. The new scapegoat, it seems right now, and I'm curious to where you're on this, is Max Muncy. I have seen so much Max Muncy hate over the last probably 3 weeks of the season. He doesn't have a home run yet. His batting average is under 200. OPS plus is 54, so well below league average. OPS 522, not the Max Muncy that we're seeing. And we're not seeing him get on base via walks. We're seeing him being hyper aggressive. I think the other day he had a 3-pitch strikeout, which is something I rarely see from Muncy. So clearly something's mechanically off or mentally off with Muncy. Everybody wants to move it around. You hear the Nolan Arenado talk, but what are you seeing from Max Muncy? Are you one of those fans that's ready to kind of like burn the bridge, start over, or like you said, it's early in the season?
Yeah, I've made a couple jokes just to kind of rile people up about Nolan Arenado. Again, you need a larger sample. Muncy's even looked better the last couple days. I think he had 3 walks in one of these games. Early in the season, though, the at-bats were very uncompetitive. Pretty clear. I say early in the season, like they haven't played like 18 or 19 games, but it was pretty clear he wasn't himself. People are reading too much into the defense. I think he's maybe made like 12 plays total at third base. I don't know the exact numbers, but again, people get mad when I say this, but it's a sample size thing for me. I can't read too much into it. You see Muncy specifically, it feels like every year he has one or two of those stretches where he just doesn't look like himself at all. And I'm inclined to believe that this is just that early in the season and until it continues for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think I'm in, agreement with you where it's like a lot of these statistics, we're only a month into the season, we're not even into May yet. We got to see it play out. If these guys are still struggling, mid-May, late May, June, that's when the Dodgers will make adjustments, whether it's options, recalling someone from the minor leagues to give them a fresh face in the lineup. The other thing with this, and the reason why I think the 7, 8, 9 hitters have been struggling is it's not really the 7, 8, 9 hitters that the Dodgers really envisioned playing. Freddie Freeman's missed like 12 games this year. Teoscar Hernandez has missed the last couple of days. Mookie Betts missed the first couple of games of the regular season. A lot of the guys in the Dodgers lineup have been out. And when you take them out, that means someone from the bench has to get at bats, and that means everybody in the lineup moves up a spot.
It's
So
8, 9, 10 now. Yeah.
So basically, someone like Tommy Edman, who's been off to a awesome start this year, showing the power, all around hitter, he was projected to be like the Dodgers' sixth hitter in that lineup. The two guys at the bottom are usually, your utility guys. Maybe Chris Taylor's in there, Kike Hernandez, Miguel Rojas. Now, though, Kike Hernandez has been getting every day at bats, and that really hasn't done him well. Obviously, he's got the pop. I think every one of his hits but one is a home run. And we saw his batting average kind of just skyrocket or dip way below the Mendoza line. So some of these guys are getting regular playing time because of the injuries. Now that Freddie Freeman's back, Mookie Betts is back, Ohtani, Teoscar, Will Smith, who's been arguably the best hitter in the Dodgers lineup this season. Now that they're all back healthy, it should help the rest of the Dodgers order. But still, the big thing for them, those guys just need to get on base. That's there's no ifs, ands, or buts around it, whether it's a walk, a hit, an error, putting the ball in play. They just got to get on base. And that's where Muncy, I think, is kind of lost, is when he's not getting his walks. That's how we know something's wrong with him, how he's feeling. But I think he's well enough of a veteran to say, hey, I can bank on this guy to correct course. But the Dodgers do have options in the minor leagues. I just don't see the Dodgers making any hasty decisions this time of the year.
No, I mean, it's going to be the same principle that Dave set out with Pages. Like, they're not doing anything before 150 plate appearances. And I know people are high on Freeland. I'm super high on Freeland. I've seen people saying he should be up getting Muncy's at bats right now. The same thing goes for them. Like, you want to see 150 plate appearances with them and see them do stuff down there. And he has a big whiff problem right now that probably needs to get adjusted before he gets the call. You see what Haesung Kim's doing down there, and that gets you excited, but it's just too early, in my opinion, to really do anything. And the Dodgers are a great team. They're not going to shake something up super major in April. It's a long season. I know people aren't happy because the Padres and Giants are both playing terrific baseball. I promise you those teams aren't going to win 125 games this year. Like, they're going to lose games. They're going to go through stretches like the Dodgers just went through and hopefully are breaking out of. Tough to tell with the Rockies, but it's baseball. Guys go through stretches. Teams go through stretches. It's really hard to read into anything right now.
Yeah, and I think you're doing terrific on the segues this episode, because we're kind of going to get to our last topic before we end it here and get ready for tonight's game, and that is the National League West. I can confirm that I think I underestimated the San Diego Padres. Not saying, like you said, I don't think they're going to win 125 games or anything like that. They do have the best record in baseball. They were the first team to get to 15 wins today. You got the San Francisco Giants. They're at 12 wins, 12-5. You got the Los Angeles Dodgers in third place, in percentage points, 13-6 record. And then the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are not far removed from a National League pennant of their own, 11-7 as well. And they're been on a scorcher. Corbin Carroll is clearly fully healthy. He has been going off against the Marlins this past week. You got 4 teams, 4 potential playoff teams. The Dodgers, clearly, they were the division winner favorite for this year. But is the race going to be a lot closer than what you thought it was going to be coming into the season?
Yeah. I think I also underestimated the Padres. I picked them to finish third in the division behind the Giants. Now at the time, I also thought there was a good chance they were going to trade some of those guys. But I mean, their negative regression is going to happen. Their rotation is solid with Cease and King, but they also have Randy Vasquez and Kyle Hart starting some games for them. Their bullpen's awesome. They're 7 through 9. Though now they've been better than the Dodgers, but it's like Hayward, Iglesias, and some days Martin Maldonado, I think. So they're due to fall off a little bit. I really haven't been paying that much attention to the Giants, to be honest with you. But it's going to be a close race, and I think that's kind of the heightened sense of frustration with people this early in the season is you see those teams are dominating. Why aren't the Dodgers dominating? But I promise you at some point that'll flip where the Dodgers go on a crazy run and the Padres are playing very mediocre baseball and their fans are saying, why can't my team play like that team's playing? So like I said, it's just baseball. But to answer your question, I do think it's going to be a closer race than we previously thought.
Yeah, I was always a believer in the Diamondbacks. You know, they had technically, statistically speaking, the best offense in baseball last year across the board, home runs, OPS, OPS plus, WRCS plus, anything you're looking at offensive to grade an offense, they were a top in the league and even better than the Dodgers 1 through 9. And this year it's kind of no different. They're a top 3 offense right now statistically as well. I believe in them. I like their pitching staff. The San Francisco Giants are just that team that I thought, they finally got their big fish in Willie Adames, and he hasn't even been their hottest hitter this year. It's kind of been Wilmer Flores is like up there. A lot of their anchors of that lineup haven't stepped up. The pitching really hasn't been that great as well either in the rotation, but they've been getting it done. They've been beating really good teams. And then the Padres, I think it's kind of what you said, where we came into the season, we saw what was happening with the ownership situation. We thought they were going to sell off some of these pieces, but now after the start that they've gotten off to, they're almost at 20 wins, 5 wins away, they're at 20. Then you got to start thinking ahead, how many wins until July to where we say, hey, we're World Series contenders. Now they have to add. They can't get rid of these guys. They're stuck with those guys, and to their fans' credit, that's a good thing because that means AJ Preller's probably going to go crazy at the deadline again and use whatever resources he has to try to either win the division or set themselves up well against the Dodgers. And what seems likely is probably going to be another playoff matchup this year if everything goes the way it is right now. But I am surprised about the Padres. I'm kind of expecting them to finish second in the division, but like you said, it's so early. There's going to be ebbs and flows of the season. The Dodgers were kind of in their funk last week. The Padres are definitely going to be due to get in their funk, in the next week or two as well. So talk to me in July and I'll say, hey, this division race, it's probably going to have 4 playoff teams this year, but I will say right now and probably for the rest of the season, this is going to be the best division in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the Padres, their window is now. With the contracts they have, their guys kind of getting older. They're going to do everything they can to win right now. And I think that's the decision they made this offseason was either we sell now or we give 1 to 2 years our best shot. And they're going to give it their best shot, which means they're going to do whatever they can to put the best team on the field possible. So it's going to be a race throughout the year. I do think the Dodgers win it. I don't think it's within 3 games towards the end of the year, but it will be closer than both of us previously thought.
Yeah, and I think that's good for the Dodgers. I've spoken about it before. I think them having either one or multiple potential playoff teams in their division helps them because then it makes pretty much every game meaningful down to the wire. And I think that speaks volumes to last year where it kind of took the final week of the season for them to win the division and then take that into the postseason. And then we saw what they did, especially against a team like the Padres who were very evenly matched. It kind of sucks the way the schedule works out. Steve Webb wrote a nice article on DodgersBeat.com about this. We don't play the Padres until like June. Same thing with the Giants. I think maybe late May. Diamondbacks are also in that same boat. Our only division opponent that we face for most of the first half of the regular season is the Colorado Rockies. And that's just not fun. I want to see the Padres. I would like to see the Padres like for this weekend series, but the way MLB's doing the schedule now, where you play everybody, every American League team you'll get a matchup with. We got to play the Rangers this weekend, which is still going to be an intriguing matchup. But I really want to see the Dodgers either head to Petco Park or the Padres come up here to Dodger Stadium. But it's kind of weird that we don't face the Friars until almost the halfway point of the year.
Yeah, it is. I do like the new schedule because you get to see more teams and really get the whole league. But it is fun to play some of those teams 19 times, or it was fun to play some of those teams 19 times a year. But it wasn't fun to go to Coors 10 times a year. So it does kind of go both ways.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll be looking forward to these National League West matchups throughout the season. I'm sure this division race is going to probably come down to the final month. I wouldn't be shocked if, say the National League East teams kind of fall off. Maybe we do get 3 NL wildcards from the NL West, and maybe it is the Giants' year. They finally go all in. Padres, Diamondbacks, they all fight for those wildcard spots. Or maybe someone like the 2021 Giants, steps up this year and can dethrone the Dodgers. I'm sure they would all like to do that. But yeah, there's really nothing else to talk about kind of in the news source right now. We're getting ready for this game tonight to see Bobby Miller, what version of Bobby Miller we're going to get. But anything else before we wrap up tonight, Jake?
Nah, just hope the Dodgers continue to win and get out this little funk. And if you're not already following / subscribed, me, Cody, Dodgers Beat, Bleed Los podcast, all of those good content always coming out.
Yeah, I would follow all of us there. Everything will be linked below in the description as well to follow us on all of our social medias, DodgersBeat.com, Bleed Los Podcast. We got multiple podcast shows. We got, English, Spanish, Japanese. We got it all. News, pregame, postgame, interviews. Obviously, we saw Jacob out there in OKC today. So if he's around and about and Kershaw's there, we'll sure be to send him again. So that'll do it for us tonight on the Bleed Los podcast. We will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, guys. And hopefully Bobby Miller has a good day today.
See you guys.